Previously, on Higurashi When They Cry Kai, Chapter 6. I got tired of reading such small print, and lay down on the floor on my back. The true identity of the curse of Shiro-sama is homesickness? In the Meiji era, a group of villagers were on their way back to Hinamizawa, and they started discussing a rumor about a weird disease. They said that maggots started crawling out of the wounds of a person who left Hinamizawa, and that the maggots ate the person's body from the inside. Hinamizawa is controlled by a parasite? You could use that theory to explain how the maggots came out of me. I felt a little bit dizzy. I was so confused, and a part of me thought it was ridiculous. And another part of me thought it was more convincing than any curse. But Mion was probably erased because she wrote these scrapbooks. What's going on here? I thought this to be a poorly written theory, but the pieces fit together, one after another. I never played a jigsaw puzzle as crazy as this. I felt my brain swirling due to this absurd theory. A part of me thought this was ridiculous, and another part of me thought I might be about to expose an unbelievable truth. When I tried to look into the center of it, I felt as if I was going to fall into the whirlpool and drown a little.
どうしたってんだよ、一体。
多分私、誰かに最近後をつけられているの。連中はひょっとすると、ミオさんのスクラップ帳を探しているのかもしれないの。
ミオさん？ああ、看護師の高野さんのことか。あと、スクラップ帳って何のことだ？
秘密の捜査になっているって言ってたから、多分、圭一君は知らないよね。高野美代さん。殺されたんだって。
いつ？
だもん。
すまん。もちろん、レナの味方になりたいのは本心だ。でも、話が全然見えないんで、どう助けてやればいいかわかんないんだ。
話せば、圭一君の身にも危険が降りかかるよ。
レナにはすでに降りかかってるんだろ？ならおあいこだぜ。気にするな。
忘れてえな。ごめんな、兄ちゃん。うちら、もう行くんて。
The man started the engine and drove away. After they left, I saw nothing. That's right. Nothing. There was no reason why they had to park here. So, were they really waiting for Reina? Sure seems like it. And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Higurashi When They Cry Kai, Chapter 6. Step 1. Avoid any suspicious people driving around in white vans. Step 2. Who the hell knows? Step 3. Profit. Hopefully lots of it. That's literally all I got on my mind right now, is just avoiding white people in white vans and just figuring out everything else that we need to do from there. And hopefully, Reina and Keiichi both will have the same mindset. Although, I really can't help but worry for Reina's mental state from this point forward, and Keiichi's for that matter, because, well, I have a feeling they're both going to end up going down the path of insanity that this parasite, this bug, seems to have instilled in everyone in the past few chapters. It's not going to be pretty. I'm certain of that.
すまなかった、レナ。俺はどこかでレナの話を疑ってたよ。本当にすまない。
いいよ、圭一君。そのおかげで待ち伏せをやり過ごせたんだしね。
あいつらは何者なんだ？その、お社様信仰を復活させようとする信者の集団の手先？
彼らにはそういう自覚はないと思う。彼らを操っている黒幕はそうなんだと思うけどね。多分ダム戦争の当時から陰で様々な工作をしてきた連中なんだと思う。
ダム戦争の最中に園崎家が裏で色々と暗躍したって話は俺も少しは聞いたことがあるな。
うん、有名な話だよね。これは大石さんに聞いたんだけど、ダム戦争の最中に誘拐事件があったんだって。これも秘密の事件なんだけど、なんでも建設大臣の孫を誘拐してダム建設中止の約束を裏取引したんだって。
It's pretty interesting that Iushi would divulge that information to you, all things considered, about the kidnapping incident. I guess he really does trust you.
大臣の孫を誘拐？おいおい、そんなの聞いたことないぞ。
大臣が犯人との取引に応じる姿勢を見せたため、事件を公にしないことになったんだって。大石さんは当時その事件に関わったから知ってるんだって。
うん。それで？
大石さんが言うには、孫の誘拐や大臣の脅迫などの手口は恐ろしいほどに高度だったんだって。その事件は園崎家が命令を下したことだけは分かっているけど、結局未解決なんだって。当時園崎家の当主である園崎お涼は武装闘争の方針を打ち出していて、配下である暴力団組織の中に特攻隊を組織したそうなの。ダム計画の撤回がどうしても望めないときは建設省に突入して武力制圧しようなんて、そんな物騒な計画を本気で練っていたらしいの。
Everybody knows that the Sonozaki family had tried to stop the Damcon project, even if it meant breaking the law. So I wasn't so surprised to hear that she had a dangerous plan like that. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Mion who came up with the idea. The plans sound just like her.
結局その計画は計画のままで終わったんだけど、それを実行するための特攻隊の訓練というのは行われていて、相当高度なものだったらしいよ。
Wishi had uncovered the information right after the dam conflict ended. At the time, Oryu even said that if the village was going to be submerged, all members of the Onikufuchi Guardians would choose to stay in their houses and drown. So because Oryu was behind those things, I couldn't just laugh off the idea of an armed assault on the Ministry of Construction. According to the information Ushi seized, she planned a suicide mission as a last resort when the dam conflict started to heat up, in case the resistance wasn't successful. She had actually obtained weapons and put people through training for the sake of that plan. What kind of weapons? The Special Attack Corps were flown to America, having received a huge amount of money from Oryu for the operation. To America? Why there? In the southern desert of the United States, some retired military soldiers gave them highly professional training. While the plan was never carried out, the Special Attack Corps became a death squad under the direct control of Oryu after they came back from America. They were involved in many unsolved terrorist incidents, and they succeeded in kidnapping the grandson of the minister as well.
嘘みたいな話だな。
No kidding.
みーちゃんがよくヘリの操縦から無線機まで何でもできるみたいなことを言うでしょ。
Now there's a funny mental image. A prepubescent Mion flying an attack helicopter.
あれは本当。みーちゃんも当時その訓練に参加してるらしいよ。
じゃああいつ本当に？
まあみーちゃんの話はともかく、このひなみ沢には大臣の孫すらも誘拐できるだけの暗殺部隊が存在するってことだけは疑っちゃダメ。
I didn't take a close look at the four men in the white van today, but thinking about it, they did look professional in a way. They were pretending to just be taking a break, but I could tell they were tense the whole time.
それであいつらはレナの命を狙っているのか？
多分狙ってはいないと思う。殺すだけだったら 私もう殺されてるよ。
じゃあ、狙いは、まさかあれか。高野さんのスクラップ帳。
圭一君が見た通り、連中は相当警戒心が強いみたいで、隙を見つけない限りは強引な手段に訴えてこないみたいなの。だって強引な連中なら私の自宅の寝込みを襲えばいいんだから。
それをしないってことは、結構慎重だってことになるな。
多分私がスクラップ帳を持っているという確信がないからだと思うの。
What if they're coming after Reina for some wholly different reason altogether? I have no idea what that other reason could be, but I think it's just an idea worth tossing out all the same. They're clearly after Reina for something. That much is an undeniable fact at this point. But what I doubt is them wanting Takano's scrapbooks. Because considering how secretive that she is in general, I honestly doubt that the higher ups even know, and Hinamizawa even are aware that Takano has these scrapbooks, or had them, to be more accurate. I guess I don't have any definite proof of that, but honestly, considering that she's been able to wander around the village all the way unscathed, all the way to the Watagashi incident, I don't really think it's... Yeah, I don't think that if anybody from up in the village's leadership knew anything about those scrapbooks, that she would have been able to walk around like that unscathed. I don't think that they would have straight up killed her, but... Well, I don't think that they would have just let her wander around with information like that either. At the very least, they could have just tried taking the information from those notebooks and maybe just holding her hostage somewhere.
But
it still just begs the question then. Actually, no way. I thought I had something, but I ended up losing that train of thought.
ところが一番重要な数冊が抜けていた。それで自分が狙われているのを察して誰かに預けたんじゃないかと考えてるんだと思うの。その有力候補が私なんだと思う。でも確証がないから強引な手段に訴えられないんだろうね。
レナ、お前かなりヤバい橋を渡ってるんじゃないのか。
Well, she kind of is.
そうだね。ちょっと怖いかな。でもそう簡単には消されないよ。私は大石さんと連携している。
Plus, you got enough crazy in you to scare off some bouncers at a freaking club.
有事の際に備えて常に連絡を取り合っているしね。
そうだ、大石さんはどう言ってるんだよ。
大石さんも園崎家が何らかの暗躍をしていないか監視してくれてるよ。
高野さんのスクラップ帳の話はしたのか。
話してない。
Well, at the very least, Ushi is aware of the guys
警察には話した方がいいだろう。それに警察ならきっと力になってくれるぞ。
At this point, I'm inclined to agree with Keiichi. I really don't think that Ushi is involved with a conspiracy that's happening within this area. So I really think it would be smart to just bring the notebooks to him.
ケイチ君、私は君にだって信じてもらえるか自信がなくて話せないでいるんだよ。大石さんに話したって絶対に信じてもらえるわけがない。
なあ、レナ。
He may not believe it, but he might be able to glean some other useful information from it that could at least, help him figure out what is actually going on here, and in turn help you guys out as well. The guy's an experienced detective. Just hand him the scrapbooks and just let him look them over, see what he can glean from them.
もう煙に巻くのはなしだ。話してくれ。一体何なんだ。何がスクラップ帳に書いてあるんだ。 高野さんが消されるほどの何が書いてあるんだ？
簡単に言うと、このスクラップ帳に書いてあることが事実なら、彼らの神が貶められることになるの。
神を貶める？
そう。お社様の神聖性が失われてしまう。だから、お社様信仰を復活させようとする彼らは、絶対に伏せたいと思っているの。
すまん、レナ。もう少し分かりやすく言ってくれ。つまり、どういうことなんだ？
つまり、お社様は神様じゃないってことなの。
神様じゃない？
I had no idea what she read that made her so certain. But whatever it was, it'd be sacrilegious for people who believed so strongly in Orishiro-sama.
お社様の教えっていくつもあるけど、その原点は、それは、中から出るな、外から入るなというもの。この大原則を守るために、その他の教義を発展させたと言ってもいいくらい。隣人を愛せとか、家内安全とか、縁結びの神様なんてのは、本当に後から取ってつけたものでしかないの。
In other words, Orishiro-sama existed solely to stop the villagers from going outside the village. Orishiro-sama doesn't bless the villagers or protect them from disasters. Honestly, going by all these notes, it seems that Orishiro-sama acts more like a bodyguard into a quarantine zone. In this case, quarantining everybody who has this parasite inside them. The people who believe in it that Orishiro-sama does all that for them, but the truth is that the people abuse his name for that purpose, generation after generation, and nothing more than that. Why did Orishiro-sama descend in the first place? Because demons came out of Onikafuchi's swamp and attacked people, so the story goes.
実は、この時点で解釈が違ってたの。鬼が湧き出して襲ったんじゃない。湧き出したものにやられると、人々を襲う鬼になるの。
Translation: People who went into the swamp got infected by this parasite that was mentioned in these notes, and they ended up spreading it to the rest of the village. So, Onikofuchi's swamp is basically, according to the note, what these notes are implying. Not the birthplace, what... I had the term in my freaking head and I lost it, but basically the point of origin of this parasite. I believe that's what this whole thing is saying.
湧き出したもの？どういう意味だよ、レナ。
Whatever came out of the swamp possessed people, crawled into their blood, controlled them, and turned them into demons. People had no resistance against whatever it was that came out of the swamp. They became demons, attacked the other villagers, and turned them into demons as well. That's right. It was a weird infectious disease that broke out from the swamp. It made the infected people go out of control. The villagers saw this disaster and explained it like so. Evil demons came out from the bottom of the swamp, possessed people, and turned them into demons as well. This is the truth of the story of the demons that came out of Onikafuchi's swamp.
確かに、それだと伝説をうまく説明できるな。
So it does.
じゃあ、お社様ってのは、ひょっとして、異国から来た医者？
Well, that'd be something.
そうだね。正確には正しくないけど、そう、医者と呼べる存在。
Okay, so maybe a medicine man.
それが降臨して伝染病を治療したの。
But that would mean if he came to Onikafuchi back a few centuries ago and treated this disease, then that would imply that he had access or knowledge of a cure for this thing, yes? If that's what you're saying, then how did this thing manage to pass on and exist all the way to the present day? Sounds to me like all Orishiro-sama, if Orishiro-sama was indeed just a doctor or a medicine man, did was just convince everybody to quarantine themselves from the rest of the world.
でも、それは治療ではなく、対処療法でしかなかった。
All his treatment could do was reduce the symptoms of the infection. Villagers could have their symptoms suppressed, but there was no way to kill the parasites that had infested them. I wonder if these suppression methods involved regulating one's emotions, because I speculate that this thing triggers inside a person's system through high levels of stress. If you could manage your stress, even while suffering under the symptoms of this thing, could that stop your infection or suppress it? Would that even be possible? After a while, the village was divided into two groups. One group was made up of the people who were already infected, and the other consisted of people who weren't. No, wait, maybe it would be possible. Because I also speculated that this thing is triggered through certain brain chemicals that get secreted through strong negative emotions like fear, anger, and all that stuff. If a person has good enough self-control over their emotions to such an extent that they could keep their fear and anger and paranoia under control, even while already experiencing the symptoms of a triggered infection by this parasite, then you would effectively be depriving the parasite of its food supply, more or less. Although it would still be alive in your system. It wouldn't starve to death per se, but rather it wouldn't have enough of the chemical that your brain secretes to in turn cause it to secrete whatever it is into your body to make you start hallucinating and make your emotions run amok. I don't know, this sounds very science fiction-y, what I'm thinking out loud. I really have no idea if such a thing would even be possible in real life to pull off, but I'm just trying to think. How could you fight against this thing? Because now that I think about it, Reina had already experienced an incident of this infection when she was younger, before she moved back to Hinamizawa, and yet she survived it. She had to have survived this thing somehow. So maybe she found a way to suppress her emotions enough to where it basically made the parasite inactive? Without a cure for the disease, the infected looked down upon the people who could only suppress their violent symptoms. They even talked about drowning them in the swamp. But they knew killing infected people wouldn't solve the problem. Their parasites came out of their water sources, including Onikafuchi's swamp. They couldn't fill them all in, for if they did that, they would lose their access to drinking water. They could have chosen to leave the village, but that was hard for them, for that was the location of their ancestors' graves. Under the power of Orishiro-sama, infected people could live without showing symptoms. So both those who were infected and those who weren't decided to live together equally and to coexist with the parasite. Orishiro-sama was impressed by the villagers' decision. He decided to stay there and continue to treat them.
それが、お社様がこの地にとどまり、人と鬼の生活を見守ったの真相か。
そしてお社様は感染者である村人たちに症状を出さないために掟を作った。その最大にして唯一のものが村から出てはいけない、外から人を入れてはいけないだったの。
I wonder if this is the whole truth, though. Because we still have what's left of this chapter and at least two more answer arcs to go through. So there's clearly a decent bit more story content to go through, so that's why I can't help but wonder. Is there even more to what we're discussing here than what we already know?
外から人を入れてはいけないってのはわかるぜ。感染者を増やさないためだろ。でも出てはいけないってのはどういう意味なんだ？
I think that should be self-evident, Keiichi. To keep this thing from spreading.
寄生虫たちは気候や風土の関係でこのひなみ沢の地でしか生きられないらしいの。
If that were true, then how the hell did you experience your infection, Reina?
だから宿主である感染者がこの地を離れようとすると強い症状を出してそれを妨害するの。その妨害こそがいわゆるお社様のたたりの正体。
No, that can't be right, because we already seen firsthand in the previous chapters that you can experience these symptoms even when you're right smack in the middle of the village. I think my theory on how this thing actually functions is closer to the truth of the matter. And by extension, I think that the homesickness aspect of this whole theory is off too, because if that was all it was, then Shion also by extension should have experienced her symptoms of her infection in Chapter 5 much sooner in her life when she was younger, when she was sent to go to that boarding school. I'm sorry, but I don't think homesickness is really it. How this thing works. The strongest symptoms of the infectious disease were violence and delirium. The infected people acted just like demons, and the impact of seeing them in the throes of the disease was strong enough to make others describe them as such. They couldn't even let people who had just come to the village. If they had left after being infected, they might go crazy in a faraway land, turn into a vicious demon, and cause a disaster. Infected people were never allowed to leave. When an infected person left the village, they brought him back by any means necessary. That was what it really meant to be demoned away. Wait a minute. If that's the... But that doesn't match up with some of the previous victims in the previous years either. Like Rika's mother that comes to mind, and who else? I know there's at least I think there's at least one other person I'm forgetting here in regards to who was demoned away. Satoshi? Well, I think Satoshi was still basically in the general prefecture when he was quote unquote demoned away, and Rika's mother was certainly still in Hinamizawa area when she supposedly vanished near the swamp. So, what sense then would it be to bring someone back to Hinamizawa if you're already in it or very near it anyway? That doesn't make sense either.
ちょっと待てよレナ。だとしたら俺やレナも村人はみんなその病気に感染してることになるよな。でも俺たちはひなみ沢を離れたって別に何の問題もないぞ。実際村人にも結婚したりして遠方に住んでる人も少なくないらしいじゃないか。ひなみ沢をちょっと離れたからって錯乱して鬼と化したなんて聞いたことないぞ。
そう、それはまさにお社様の目論見通りにことが進んだからなんだよ。意味がわかるかな？
Not really.
この村を長い間封印してきたのは寄生虫の害を弱めるためなの。
Translation: isolated the people within the village so they could basically build up an immunity to it over time That's what you mean, right? Or to be more accurate, have their descendants develop an immunity through it over the generations. Hosts are very important for parasites. If something happens to the host, the parasites that live in the host have to share the same fate. In other words, if the host went crazy and attacked people, the host would be captured and killed, which means that the parasites would die of the host too.
そうか。自然淘汰か。
さすが圭一君。そう。この地で長く生活を重ね、厳しい戒律で生活を続けた結果、寄生虫に対し過敏な人間は錯乱して結局殺された。また感染者を錯乱させてしまうような強すぎる寄生虫はこれもまた錯乱した宿主と共に殺された。その結果、寄生虫と人間は互いに相性がいい種だけが残っていった。
Translation: Only the parasites that didn't trigger severe symptoms in their hosts, like what we saw with the other characters in previous chapters, got to survive on account of not making their hosts go crazy.
これこそがお社様の伝説が伝える鬼と人の血は混じり合ったことの真相。
じゃあ、つまりその寄生虫はほとんど無害なわけなのか。
Yeah, no. If my big theory is right on the money, then as the end of chapter 3 has demonstrated, more or less, this parasite is very far from harmless even now.
ミオさんのスクラップ帳によると、そういった無害な寄生虫に感染しているケースというのはかなり多いんだって。食文化にもよるけど、例えば生肉を食べる国では国民の8割くらいが感染している例もあるんだって。でも共生できてて人体に全く無害だから誰も治療しない、気づかん、だから撲滅もされない。
なるほどな。
太古の綿流しはね、実は腹綿流しと書く物騒なものでね、錯乱した犠牲者の臓腑を食らうものだったの。でもこれも必要なことだった。
They could have just burned it.
感染して犠牲になった人を食らう。まさかワクチンとか。
圭一君はやっぱり頭がいいね。
Did they even have a concept of vaccines and immunity concepts like that back then?
ミオさんもそう読み解いてる。伝説では犠牲者を生きたまま解体して食らったなんて物騒なことになっているけど、実際はそんな野蛮なものじゃなくて、もっともっと医学的に取り扱われていたらしいの。
I'm not sure how much of that I believe, if any of it.
強すぎる寄生虫のせいで死んだ犠牲者からワクチンを作り出し、同時に村人の抵抗力も高めていった。
お社様ってのは何者なんだよ一体。医学先進国っていうとドイツか。正体はひょっとしてナンパして流れ着いた外国人医師。
多分圭一君の答えが一番一般的だと思う。ドイツ人ではないんだけど、とりあえず医者的な存在であったのは正解。
古代の伝説の秘密が明かされていくってのはなんだか面白いな。
I don't know. I still feel like we're missing something. I don't think that Reina's story is too crazy to be true anymore. It still sounds crazy, of course, but I never heard any theories that explain the legends of this village better than this one.
多分俺も感染してるんだよな。なんだか体中が痒くなってくるぜ。
人間だって一つの宇宙だよ。体の中には無数の細菌たちが住んでいる。その中には私たちの生活には欠かせない有用な細菌たちも少なくないんだよ。
And you can help feed some of those essential bacteria by consuming probiotics. So, for those of you who want to do that, Eat yogurt.
ああ、よくヨーグルトとかの CM で言ってるよな。
Right, Keiichi.
確かにそうだ。
Great minds think alike. Dear God, I just called my mind and his great.
これもミオさんの受け売りだけど、例えばシロアリっているでしょ。木材を食い荒らしてしまうアリ。実はシロアリって木材を消化できないんだって。
Now that last little bit I didn't know. How do they digest it then?
体内に寄生している特殊な細菌が食べた木材の繊維を分解してくれて、その結果シロアリは木材を吸収できるんだって。
Fascinating.
これも寄生虫と共生している一例だね。
You learn something new every day. I didn't know that. When I hear the word parasites, I feel creeped out almost instinctively. But now I know some of them aren't so bad to us. Do you want to know about a type of parasite that exists inside all of human life on the cellular level? Look up mitochondria.
だから太古の昔に鬼ヶ淵村から突如発生した奇怪な伝染病は今ではほぼ根絶されたと言っていい。根絶じゃないね。無害になったと言うべきだね。
最初はとんでもない話だと思ってたけどさ、こうして種明かしがされるとなんだかサイエンスな感じがしてちょっと面白い話だよな。
私たちには面白いよ。でもお社様を神として崇める人たちにとってはこれはとても不愉快な説。
Of course. If Takano-san's theory is correct, Oishiro-sama isn't a god. And the punishment by that god, namely the curse of Oishiro-sama that people have been so afraid of, will turn out to have been just the symptoms of an infectious disease. I see. That's what dethroning God would mean.
だとすると、もしこの伝染病の病原体を特定して世間に発表されるようなことがあれば、信仰は破綻しちまうな。
そう。それこそが彼らの一番恐れることなの。そしてミオさんはその病原体を特定しようとしていたらしい。そのミオさんが消されたということは。
特定できたってことか。
かもしれないね。ミオさんはもういないし、彼女のスクラップ帳にも特定できたとは書かれていない。
Seems like a very important detail that should have been put in there somewhere if she did identify this thing. But the thing is, I still very much suspect that she's involved in the grand conspiracy of inside Hinamizawa. So I have no reason to believe that she would put that information in those scrapbooks if her goal is to only feed you certain bits of information to get you to start thinking about things in a certain way. Kind of like what she did with Shion in Chapter 5, and with Keiichi in previous chapters, so on and so forth.
でも、消されるに値する理由が他に思いつかないの。
でもよ、20世紀ももうすぐ終わろうっていう現代だぜ。村人だっていろんな医療機関で検査を受けてきたはずだ。なのにそういう怪しげな寄生虫が摘出されたって話はないんだろう。
That's actually a good question. If this parasite doesn't travel through the blood... Well, if it does, actually. Never mind. If it does travel through the blood, then wouldn't somebody from Dr. Irie's clinic, if they've done any blood work on any of the villagers at any point, have discovered this thing by now? I need to figure out how this thing travels through the human body.
確かに病原体そのものは未だ発見されていない。でも確かに何かの寄生を受けていることの信号だけは確認されているんだって。
なんだって。
Well, either way, I do think it's an interesting thing to think about. Has someone from has anybody from Irie's clinic ever come across anything strange from any blood work or anything that they've done on any of the villagers?
本当かよ。
When a parasite enters a human body, that body's immune system cells, eosinophils, even though I've never even seen this word before, eosinophils and macrophages try to kill the parasite. They secrete an antibody called immunoglobulin, IgE. The most common way of checking if a person is infected by a pathogen is to look at the levels of the secretion. Did Tomataki's autopsy in Chapter 1 ever mention this secretion? I don't remember if it did or not. According to Takano's research, people from Hinamizawa have a very high level of IgE in their blood. That's not all. They also have obvious symptoms of being infected by parasites, such as they don't have any allergies. IgE stimulates mast cells and they secrete histamines? I don't think I'm saying that right either, and serotonin as a result. These cause an allergic reaction. That allergic reaction isn't pleasant for humans, but it's necessary for the body to kill the pathogen. But the parasites don't want to be killed, of course, so they secrete substances that counteract IgE. As a result, IgE stops stimulating the receptors of the mast cells, which stop secreting the chemical compounds. As a result, the antigen-antibody reaction, namely the allergic reaction, doesn't occur. Fascinating. In other words, a human body that was infected by a parasite secretes a high level of IgE, but doesn't display allergic reactions. For your information, a human body that's infected by a parasite doesn't suffer from hay fever. You get hay fever due to your body secreting a large amount of IgE because it's mistaken pollen for a parasitic invasion. As a result, a large amount of stimulants like histamine will be secreted, but your body can't contain the parasite that it's attempting to kill. That's why your body continues to secrete IgE. As a result, the stimulants keep causing allergic reactions. That's how a hay fever works. If you have a parasite in your body, it'll deactivate your IgE and suppress the secretion of stimulants. As a result, you don't have an allergic reaction. In other words, there's no hay fever in Hinamizawa, and you can cure your hay fever by moving here.
つまり特定はできなくてもその存在だけは疑いようがないってわけだ。
うん、そうなるね。
だとするとそのスクラップ帳は信心深い連中にとっては十分危険な存在だな。たとえ特定できなくても存在を証明している時点で十分に危険だと思うぞ。
I don't think they clearly prove it beyond a shadow of the doubt, but given all the other previous events of the last few chapters, I do think that they give my big theory some credence.
そうだね。たとえ証拠にはならなくても、彼らにとってはミオさんを葬るに値する危険性があったと思う。
確かに恐ろしい秘密だな。ちゃんと説明してもらえば理解できることだが、いきなり聞いたら刺激が強すぎる話だぜ。
でしょ？だから私も最初は信じられなかったし、圭一君に話しても信じてもらえないと思った。
で、大事なのはその事実を隠蔽しようと暗躍してるヤバい連中がいるって方なんだよな。
そう、今大事なのはそっちの方。
The fanatics who want to revive the sanctity of the god they worship. Reviving the majesty of their god means reviving the power of that god. And the power of their god is the infectious disease. This infectious disease can't spread nationwide, unlike other infectious diseases. So from now on, I'm going to start calling it an endemic disease. That fits better, since it only affects this region. Anyway, the endemic disease of current-day Hinamizawa is different from the one of old times. It's been through a process of natural selection, and it's harmless now. I still very much doubt that. In other words, it doesn't do any harm to human bodies. That harm was once interpreted as a curse. A curse is the power of a god. So, a harmless and endemic disease means that the god is powerless. That means the only way to regain the majesty of that god is to revive the curse. In other words, they want to bring back the primitive endemic disease, namely the harmful, strong version of the parasite.
ちょっと待てよ。信者たちは神が実は寄生虫だったなんてことは否定したいんだろう。なのに寄生虫を研究するのかよ。矛盾してないか？
It kind of is, yeah.
矛盾しているよ。だからこの研究は信者たちのトップだけが知る秘密の研究なんだと思う。彼らは表向きは信仰を盛り上げているけど、その裏では信仰の正体について極めて冷静に理解していて、神の技を自らの手で復活させようとしている。
Could also be a case of doublethink and believing their own lies.
なるほどな。おいおい、なんだかとんでもない話になってきたぞ。
ミオさんのスクラップ帳にはそうとは一言も書かれてないんだけど、私監督の診療所って怪しいと思うの。
異例診療所がどうして？
ひなみ沢の規模から見て施設が立派すぎるのがその理由。そしてミオさんはそこに勤めていた。監督は園崎家にスカウトされてきた細菌学者が正体とか。
So are we finally going to start looking into the clinic?
監督がか？
ミオさんは余計なことを知りすぎたから消されたんだと思うの。なのに監督が消されない理由は、監督は信者たちに依頼されている立場だから。
We don't know that for sure.
そして太古の有害な風土病を研究してるってのか？あの監督が。
ごめん。監督は無関係かもしれないね。
I don't think so, given the bizarre circumstances of his supposed suicide in Chapter 3.
今のは私の思いつき。でも、研究は間違いなく、どこかで誰かにさせている。そして、その研究には5年かかり、ついに完成を見た。
The first case was a dismemberment murder by the damn construction workers. Their quarrel had turned into a lynching. They might have had the primitive infectious disease, and the symptoms, the aggression, and delirium might have kicked in. The victims of the second year were Satoko's parents. There were no witnesses, so the whole event is veiled in mystery. But there's a theory that someone might have pushed them over the cliff, since the fence of the observation deck that they fell from was quite sturdy. What if one of them was infected by the primitive parasite? He or she might have become violent and pushed the other over the cliff. Well, that would explain it. The Shinto priest died from a disease, and his wife drowned herself in the third year. He might have died of shock because of a hypersensitive reaction to the infection. His wife might have gone crazy and committed suicide when one of the symptoms, delirium, kicked in. In the fourth year, Satoshi Hojo's aunt was beaten to death, probably by Satoshi himself. Everybody who knew Satoshi-kun remembers how he changed at that time. He showed signs of being both aggressive and delirious. In the fifth year, For the first time in 5 years, the victim experienced the maggot disease, described in the old scroll of the Farood Shrine. The reason behind that is unclear, but the stronger primitive parasite could have given its victims a delusion of maggots. This means that they finally managed to duplicate the curse of Orishiro-sama after 5 years of research. Tomitaki-sen is the victim of the 5th year. He died in an extremely abnormal way, and I'm the only one who understands his death because I experienced the same thing. He kept clawing at his throat to get rid of the maggots and died as a result. Okay, let's just say for the sake of argument that you're right on the money about this whole cult basically researching this parasite and trying to find a way to bring it back to its former strength. All for the express purpose of bringing power back to their so-called god. What sense then does it make for this same cult to murder their local Jesus Christ figure, Rika Farood, and just let the reaction that everybody in the village would undoubtedly experience from that just kick the whole damn parasite into overdrive by that point? It seems very counterproductive to what they're trying to do, don't you think? Although I know you guys don't know this, but I'm just thinking out loud here. The more that we talk about, the more that you guys talk about this, the less and less it makes sense to me. There's more than a few unanswered questions and even straight up contradictions here that's just making me think you're only half right about this stuff. Or at least partially correct. I know there has to be some truth in here somewhere regarding the parasite and everything. I'm just trying to think. What? Yeah, This isn't quite adding up to me. Is all I really want to say. With all that explained, I finally understand the maggot disease I experienced in Ibaraki. I left Hinamizawa, and it made the parasite in me uncomfortable. As a result, it tried to resist, even though it wasn't very strong, and it tried to make me homesick. But with my parents' divorce, I grew mentally unbalanced, and I completely lost the power to resist for a period of time. The parasite was weak and harmless, but my mental instability allowed it to worsen my symptoms dramatically. As a result, I went crazy and became violent. The delusion of Orishiro-sama appearing to me in the bathroom was probably the terminal phase of my delirium. I created the supernatural existence, Orishiro-sama, that I was instilled with when I was little. Then I persuaded myself to go back to Hinamizawa, based on that delusion. I think this is definitely one of the few instances in this conversation where you are completely right on the money here. Some of the transcendents of Onikafuchi must have had the same kind of experience. They must have passed their experiences down as at the acts of a god. I remember I once saw it on TV that the indigenous people in South America used some kind of natural drug in order to have a mystical experience, and that they called it a ritual to communicate with their gods.
じゃあ、信者どもの目的は、その太古の寄生虫をひなみ沢中にばらまくことなのか？
多分、それが最終目的だと思う。でも、人知れずにそれをやることはないと思うの。宗教にはセレモニーが必要だから。だからもし、彼らが望むものを生み出せて、それをばらまく日が訪れたなら、彼らは多分それを、お社様の復活の人でも称して、宗教的なデモンストレーションをすると思うの。何か特別な儀式とか、とにかく、お社様の復活を祝い、知らしめるような盛大な何か。
I don't know. if the so-called day of Orishiro-sama's revival involves killing Rika, as we saw at the end of chapter 3, doesn't that seem kind of self-contradictory, since Rika is pretty much seen by the locals as the living incarnation of Orishiro-sama?
なあ、それってよ、悪いことなんだよな。
危険性の高い病原体をばらまこうというんだから、多分悪いことに分類されるだろうね。
それって細菌テロって言わないか。おい、めちゃくちゃヤバいことだぞ。おい、富武さんの死に方がお社様のたたりの再現に成功していた以上、 X デーは間近ってことなんじゃないのか。
わからない。もう秒読みなのか、まだまだ時間のかかることなのか。
もうこれはレナ一人が抱えていい問題じゃないぞ。かなり笑えない大陰謀だぞ。俺たちにはどうしようもない。警察に任す方がないぞ。
私が話したこと、警察は信じてくれると思う？
信じるかどうかは向こうが判断するだろう。とにかく話した方がいい。
圭一君、それを大石さんに私が打ち明けたら、私がスクラップ帳を持っていることを告白するのと同じなんじゃないかな。
それってまずいのか。
大石さんの接触はミオさんが殺された後だった。敵はミオさんを殺した時点でスクラップ帳の紛失とその数日前に私が図書館で出会っていることを知っている。
バカな。つまり。
そう、大石さん自体が敵の手先である可能性がある。
I very strongly doubt that too.
大石さんは私がスクラップ帳を持っている可能性があると当たりをつけていて、探りを入れてきているのかもしれない。実際彼はうさんくさくて腹を割らない。園崎家を疑わせるようなことを言って自分は味方だと言ってくるけど、彼だってその園崎家の手先かもしれない。
警察を疑い出したらおしまいだぞ。
圭一君、4年目の撲殺事件を知ってるよね。里子ちゃんのおばさんが殺された事件。あれは犯人はサトシ君以外に考えられないんだけど、その後犯人は麻薬中毒者だったということになった。これをどう思う？
警察内部に盲信的な連中の手先が混じっていて、犯人を捏造したってことか。
3年目の神主さんの病死の検視とか、2年目の北条夫妻の事故現場の見聞とか。警察がもしも彼らの片棒を担いでいるなら、数々の完全犯罪が可能になる。ひなみ沢御三家はダム戦争時から今日に至るまでもずっと警察への圧力を維持してるんだよ。それに沖宮の町のいろんなところに一族が進出して実権を握っているというのはみーちゃんから聞かされたことがあるんじゃない？
Imaginary power, yes. Going by Mion's words to Shion towards the end of chapter 5.
確かに。それはミオンの口からだけじゃない。いろんな奴の口から聞かされた。ミオンの園崎家がどれだけ市内全域に強力な影響力を持っているかってのをな。
そういうこと。警察はこの土地では必ずしも信用できない。
なあ、レナ、すまん。先にはっきりさせたいんだが、黒幕は園崎家なのか？ミオンも関係があるってのか？それだけは先に聞かせてくれ。
御三家であるみーちゃんやリカちゃんが直接関係しているかはわからない。ただ盲信的な勢力が御三家や一番の有力家である園崎家を自由に動かせる中枢部に根付いているのは間違いない。盲信的な勢力が根付いたのか、御三家の中枢が盲信的なのかは分かりかねるけどね。
関係あるかどうかわからない以上、用心に越したことはないってわけだな。
うん。みーちゃんたちのことを疑うわけじゃないよ。普段のみーちゃんは頼もしいし、私も他の心配事なら打ち明けて助力を求めることもあると思う。ただ今回のことはちょっと話の次元が違う。 圭一くんは見たことあるかな。みーちゃんは普段はふざけているけど、園崎家の次期当主として振る舞うときはものすごく冷酷で別人みたいに振る舞えるの。
That's because she has to in order to play a certain role.
それに、もし無関係だったとしても、それならばやはり耳に入れることで危険に巻き込むことにもなるんじゃないかな。
How? She is basically the future head of the Sonozaki family. Would these hypothetical fanatics actually be willing to go so far as to murder the future head of the freaking Sonozaki family in order to protect this secret from getting into the wrong hands? I'm not so sure.
ミオンたちが味方になってくれればかなり頼もしいぞ。俺は打ち明ける価値があると思うんだが。
だからそれはダメ。敵ではないと確認が取れるまでそれは避けるべきだよ。味方にできれば確かに心強いけど、そうでなかった時はどうするつもり？
じゃあ俺とレナだけでどう戦うつもりなんだよ。
もともと最初から絶望的な戦いなんだよ。だから圭一くんを巻き込みたくなかった。
So what exactly are you going to do then?
くそ、高野さんね、とんでもない置き土産を残してくれたな。
でもそのおかげでとてつもない陰謀を知ることができたんだよ。これはミオさんの遺言なんだよ、きっと。
村を影から牛耳る何者かに、その村に住まうガキンチョ2人が挑むわけだ。こいつは最高にハードな話だぜ。
You think?
一筋縄じゃいかねえぞ。
でも圭一くんが味方でよかったよ。2人だから話し合えて相談できる。
当たり前だろ。俺は最初からずっとレナの味方で仲間だぞ。
ありがとう。2人なら心強いよ。
一人で悩むよりは建設的になれるだろうしな。
そうだね。2人でどう戦えばいいか、これからじっくり相談していこう。
You've been on the phone for almost an hour. Considering the time period you're in, you must be seriously racking up the phone bill right about now.
今日は私スクラップ帳を読み直す時間が欲しかったから休んだけど、明日からは普段通りに生活するね。おかしな行動をすれば気取られてしまうかもしれないからね。圭一くんも変に構えないで普段通りに生活してね。みーちゃんとか時折鋭いことがあるから特に気をつけて。
わかった。何事もなかったかのように生活するよ。だが畜生、なんだか怖いぜ。とんでもない陰謀が間近に迫ってて、それがもうカウントダウンに入ってるかもしれないってんだぜ。それを知りつつ普段通りに生活しろってのも辛い話だよな。
多分そんなにすぐじゃないはずなの。さっきも言った通り、彼らが信心深ければ深いほど宗教的なセレモニーを必要とするはず。そういうセレモニーは村を挙げて行うものだもの。綿流し以上のイベントは今のひなみ沢には存在しない。
ということは少なくとも来年の綿流しまでは大丈夫ということか。
根拠のない読みだけどね。他に綿流し以上のイベントが思いつかない。
I think we have a year, at least. Try a week. Or actually, no, a few days. Considering Rika's seemingly inevitable demise that's going to occur very shortly, within the next day or two. But I also feel like we don't, because of how they killed Mio-san. I might not know, but there might be a bigger religious event than Watanagashi. It might not be long until that day. On the day of Orishiro-sama's revival, they're going to spread a dangerous parasite, and that day might be just around the corner.
レイナ、まだ電話してるのか？そろそろ終わりにしなさい。
My father stuck his head out from the living room, telling me I need to hang up soon. I thought about telling him so many times. It's natural to think that your parents will be on your side no matter what. But I just know how weak he can get. So I couldn't tell him. I don't think he'd believe me anyway. Even if I told him, he'd just tell me to call the police. It's better that I don't tell him. They might get close to my father to get me. If he didn't know anything about anything, including the scrapbooks, there'd be nothing to squeeze out of him to begin with. They could also use him as a hostage.
ごめんね、ケイチ君。今夜はもう遅いから、これで切るね。また明日、学校で。
おう、また明日、学校で。
用心してね。ケイチ君も、もう部外者じゃないんだから。
おう、せいぜい気をつけるぜ。
I remembered the suspicious men in the white van, and felt a chill run through my spine. They looked like villagers, but they weren't. They had the village accent, but they were just pretending. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious they became. He'd let me know that Reina and I aren't safe. If Reina is right, they're just suspicious of her, and they're not sure if she has the scrapbooks or not. But it's still creepy. Reina had probably experienced the same creepiness I felt when I saw the van several times up until now. She must sense the danger more than I do. However, the fact that they weren't attacking, that they were merely observing us, was disturbing. If they attacked her, she could have done something, like going to the police. But all they're doing is just watching her from a distance. She can't do anything about it. She can't talk to anybody about it. She probably just wants to stay in her house all day. But if she acted different, they might take it as proof that she has the scrapbooks. And that... We still have yet to definitively prove that the whole premise that these people are after the scrapbooks is even real. We have to think about how to fight against them without making it obvious. I told myself that there was no going back, and I put the phone down. The next day, Reina came to school, acting like she said she would. She talked with Mion as cheerfully as she always did, and it made me wonder if the story she told me last night was a complete fabrication. That's because the story really was too ridiculously crazy to believe. Try also incomplete and straight up incorrect / contradictory at a couple points. This village has a very weird and rare endemic disease, and there are religious fanatics who want to use the disease to revive their weird cult. And they've been researching the pathogen of the endemic disease so they can spread throughout the village. Honestly, I think it's probably more accurate to say that there is some group out there that's probably been researching this pathogen to use it as a means to destroy this village. Considering the end results that we get at the end of chapter 3, and how that likely came about. I was deeply influenced by Reina last night, and I believed everything she said. But thinking about it with a cool mind under the bright sunlight, it sounds too crazy to be true. The story Reina told me is based on Takano-san's crazy hand-me-down ideas. It's based entirely on her theories, which, though very feasible, have no evidence whatsoever. Thank you for at least acknowledging that much. The fact that Takano-san was murdered lends credit to the story. I'll give you that, but assuming she actually was murdered, I looked at Mion. She was fooling around with Reina. It's hard to believe that she's involved with some crazy conspiracy. We don't know that she is.
ていうか、
And I don't
聞い
think
てない
she
でしょ、ケイちゃん。
And honestly, I don't think she is anyway.
悪い。ごめん、聞いてなかった。
まだ寝ぼけたまんまなのかな。寝不足だとおつむもちゃんと働かないよ。
Mion made fun of me for reacting too slowly. It's almost impossible not to trust this bubbly, cheerful girl. I trust Mion. I trust my friends. So tell her. I know she'd never have a hand in a crazy conspiracy like that. If she knew about it, she wouldn't be able to act as cheerfully. Marina told me not to tell Mion because she might be one of them. But it might be worth telling her without letting Reina know. That, I don't think would be a good idea. It would really be a good idea, because if Reina finds out that you told Mion about this behind her back, that could end up turning out very badly. And that, in turn, could cause her own paranoia to spike up even further, thus feeding the parasite. And, well, yeah. Of course, there's at least 1% chance that the conspiracy is true, and that Mion is one of them. If so, I'd be doomed. But if I had to choose between believing the crazy conspiracy theory and trusting my friends, the answer would be obvious. I know that my friend, Mion, isn't part of any conspiracy. She'd never be involved with something like that. Even if the conspiracy exists, I'm sure Mion will be on our side. So, whether or not it's true, it must be worth telling Mion about it.
なあに、ケイちゃん。
We're really gonna tell her, aren't we?
こんなところに呼び出して。それも誰にも内緒で来いなんてさ。まさかカツアゲとかそういうのじゃないよね。
No, that's the sort of thing I expect you to do, what with being part of a Yakuza family and all. No, I'm actually here to propose to you. I'm totally not going to tell you about some grand old conspiracy involving parasites or anything like that.
お前な、体育倉庫の裏に呼ばれたら、真っ先にそう思うのかよ。
んじゃあ、ラブレターとか？
Well, I guess that is similar to my proposal, so...
でもそういうのは下駄箱が定番じゃない？
都会じゃそうでもないぞ。直接渡す白兵線型も少なくない。
Ah, so city boys in city boys in Japan are more ballsy with their love letters.
じゃあ、
Yes. It is time for you both to experience true love, as Orishiro-sama intended.
なわけねえだろ。
God damn it, Keiichi. Why do you have to be stubborn about this?
それより、かなり真面目な話がある。茶化しは一切なしで聞いてくれ。
何よ、どうしたの？
お社様信仰を復活させようとしている連中がいる。ってのは知ってるか？
Just getting right to it, huh?
は？何、ケイちゃん。何の話？
This, of course, was just my way of getting a feel for the situation. I wanted to see how she was going to react by getting straight to the point. But Mion really did look puzzled. People wouldn't normally react like this if someone pointed out their secrets out of the blue. Have you met a bona fide liar in your life, boy? Of course they'd act confused. If they're even halfway decent about keeping up a facade. They always panic, if only just a little. Either Mion was a brilliant actress, or she really didn't have anything to do with the idea of reviving Orishiro-sama. I decided to tell her everything.
ミオ、お前の家の園崎家ってひなみ沢を含めものすごい影響力を持ってるわけだけどさ、お社様信仰を復興するため何か暗躍してるってことはあるか？
こうなんで？
いや、だからさ、今のお社様信仰って大昔の時代に比べたらだいぶ信仰心が薄くなってるだろ。それをさ、大昔の鬼ヶ淵村のレベルまで引き戻したいと思っている。いわゆる原理主義者的な連中が暗躍をしてるんじゃないかって。
はい？ちょっと何の話なわけ？
本当に何の話かわからないのか？
I really don't think she does, bro.
わかるわけないよ。何その全米第1位みたいな面白ストーリーはさ。
Mion's reaction was very natural. It seemed impossible that she was pretending she didn't know anything about it. But regardless, I continued.
いや、だからそういう連中がこの村にいるらしいんだよ。ミオは知らないか？
Wouldn't it just be hilarious if Reina was actually watching Keiichi around the corner right now as we speak and is just shaking with anger over his betrayal of her trust?
お社様信仰を鬼ヶ淵村の時代のレベルに？そんなことして何かいいことあるの？
いや、それは信仰の厚い盲信的な連中にとってはとても重要な意味がある。
だってケイちゃん、大昔の厳しい戒律の頃に逆戻りって誰も喜ばないよ。
Fundamentalists, of course.
今のこの現代、村から出るななんて言われたら生活なんかやってられないって。
例えばほら、リカちゃん。リカちゃんって何でもお社様の生まれ変わりとか言ってちやほやされてるらしいだろ。そういった取り巻きの老人たちの中にはきっと執着的な一派が存在して。
リカちゃんの取り巻きっていうと君吉のおじいちゃんとかのこと？まあ確かに信仰心は熱い方だと思うけど、盲信的ってのはどうかと思うね。
いや、だからいるんだよ。本来のお社様信仰を再び復活させようとしている輩が。
はいはい、話が進まないからこの場は信じるよ。それで
そいつらはお社様の正体がこの土地独特の風土病にあることを突き止め、その病原体を研究しているらしいんだ。
You know, I really think you'd be able to make your case a bit stronger to Mion if you had those notes with you. But I know you can't really get them right now because of Reina, but yeah, I really don't think you're prepared enough to get Mion to seriously consider what you're proposing to her right now is what I'm saying. And so, because of that, I think she's going to end up thinking that you, and if she finds out that Reina thinks this too, you both are probably going a little crazy right now, and so she's going to get the coach to come coach you into something resembling reality. Know what I mean?
どこで？というか、風土病って何？病原体って何よ？
You don't know these things?
園課長！
Well, yeah, I guess they kind of are by default, but I was getting confused. I didn't know what I was I didn't know what I was talking about myself anymore. I was deeply influenced by Reina last night and believed everything she said. But having said it all out loud, I started realizing how impossible the story sounded.
どうしたの？ミオさんに妙なことでも吹き込まれたわけ？
Indirectly, in a manner of speaking.
知ってるのか？
有名だよ。 あの人オカルトマニアだから、いっつもとんでもない空想話をでっち上げてる。たまに真に受ける人がいるとかなりヘビーに吹き込むって有名なんだよ。私も昔話を聞かせてもらったことがあったけど、結構面白かったな。
So she tried to sink her claws into you before, huh?
それって本当か？
ケイちゃんもどこかで耳にしてるだろうけど、この村は大昔はちょっと特殊な文化があった。それは少し刺激の強い要素のある文化でね。厳しい戒律と厳しい刑罰、残酷な風習は割とオカルトマニアの間では知られてるらしい。ミオさんもそんなマニアの中の一人。
じゃあこの村が怪しげな寄生虫に支配されているという話は？
はあ？寄生虫？それミオさんの新作？
Do you not know she's dead?
新作ってどういうことだよ？
言ったでしょ、ミオさんはオカルトマニアなの。鬼ヶ淵村の奇怪な伝説などを研究して、あれやこれやの仮説や推理、妄想を楽しんでるわけよ。
Well, you do keep referring to her in the present tense, so obviously you probably don't know at this point.
だからその寄生虫に村が支配されてるって説以外にもいろいろ捜索してる。私がずいぶん前に聞いたのは UFO 説だったよ。これが結構辻褄が合ってて面白いの。太古の昔に鬼ヶ淵村に UFO が墜落して、そこから出てきた異星人と村人で戦いが起こってという感じから始まる B 級 SF ホラーだった。
We are talking about the same nurse Takano, right? Last I checked, she's not into sci-fi stuff.
サトコが聞かされたってのは地底人説だったかな。地殻変動によって地底王国と鬼ヶ淵村の間に接点ができてしまって、それでなんだっけかな。
I don't think Takano was a marine biologist either.
そうそう、地底王国のお姫様と村の若者が恋をして互いに仲直りをしたっていう SF ロミオとジュリエットだった。んで最新作がどうやらケイちゃんの聞かされた寄生虫説ってわけみたいだね。いやいや、いつかそれらを全部まとめて本にしてほしいよ。
Mion began laughing so hard she had to hold her stomach. I looked at her laughing like that. I realized I fell for something that ridiculous. At that point, it was obvious. I had been completely taken in.
すまんミオ、俺がこれから聞くことに答えてくれ。まずお社様信仰を復活させようとする連中は実在する？
しないよ。というかむしろ逆。南沢は外部に対してどんどん開いていって栄えさせていこうということで、御三家はすでに意見を統一してる。これはまだ内緒なんだけど、21世紀までをめどにね、新しい高速道路がここいらを通るという計画があるんだよ。
Highway, huh?
園崎家は現在水面下でその誘致をしててね、うまくいけばここいらは一気に栄えることになる。
So, basically, it's possible that the Hinamizawa village may one day turn into Hinamizawa town?
バッチャはそれによって山林の地価が一気に高騰して大儲けできると踏んでるみたいだよ。まあ21世紀の仕事だから、それは私が引き継ぐ大仕事になりそうだけどね。
じゃあ外部の人間を意味嫌う連中なんての存在しない？
だからそんなの存在しないって。ただでさえ不便な村をさらに不便にしてどうするんだか。現に村は今別荘地として売り出しを開始してる。ケイちゃんの家はまさにその第1号じゃないの。
Wow, interesting.
村人はみんな歓迎してくれたでしょ。若者の流出を食い止めるため、御三家もいろいろと考えてるんだから。
There was nothing vague about what Mion had said. Her story makes a lot more sense than Takano-san's delusional theories. And so Mion's words woke me up from that delusion.
じゃあ、あれはどうだよ。寄生虫の感染の証拠を示す血液中のなんとかとかいう数値が、ひなみ沢の住民だけ異常に高いみたいな話が。
I heard that the residents of Hinamizawa have extraordinarily high levels of something in their blood. Could you be more specific, please?
そうなの？というか、ミオさんはそんなのどうやって調べたわけ？
だって、高野さんは看護師だろ。調べる気になれば。
そんな怪しげな調査のために、誰が血液採取なんかに協力するの？誰もしないって。それに、仮に採血をしたってどこでどう調べたわけ？
Probably Urie's clinic.
ミオさんがたった一人で一体何人の血を調べられたっていうわけ？
Who the hell knows? Mion was right. I couldn't believe I thought Takano-san could do all that just because she was a nurse. It struck me hard to believe that she got that many blood samples and did a high-level examination like that without any help. When I thought about it rationally, I shouldn't have believed such a ridiculous story so easily.
寄生虫の寄生の証拠として、花粉症にかからないって聞いたぞ。
花粉症って都会の病気じゃないの。あれは確か排気ガスと関係があるんでしょ？
Fuel emissions cause hay fever? I don't know if I believe that.
ここはひなみ沢だよ、ケイちゃん。というか、多分沖宮の人にだって花粉症なんてそうそういないと思うけど。
じゃああれは、園崎本家当主直属の暗殺部隊ってのがいて、昔大臣の孫の誘拐とかをやったんだろう。
Oh, now you're bringing up the kidnapping of the minister's son, which she definitely had a hand in, so I'm curious to know how she's going to react to this little tidbit.
そんなのがいたらかっこいいね。
Apparently very well. Even I was sounding ridiculous. But I believed all of it last night. I believed it because Reina looked very serious.
大臣の孫が高津戸のあたりで突然発見されたのは事実。だけれど、あれは私たちじゃない。私たちじゃないけど、それを私たちはさも自分たちが犯したように振る舞ってた。
Yeah, no comment.
わかりにくいぞ。説明してくれ。
うん。ダム戦争の当時、鬼ヶ淵死守同盟は相当に物騒な抵抗運動をしていたのは事実。脅迫めいたこともやってのけた。でもね、あの当時それを利用するやらしい連中もいたらしいの。鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の名を語って金品を要求したりするエセ同盟って連中。
First I heard of this. The Onikafuchi Guardians were a very aggressive force at that time. There's a high possibility that some people thought they could use the name to extort money.
その中に大臣の孫の誘拐もあったの。おそらく誘拐犯たちは警察の捜査の撹乱を狙って死守同盟のふりをして身代金を要求したんだと思う。正直あの事件は同盟にとっても驚きだったよ。よく大臣の孫を誘拐できたもんだって話題になったね。犯人たちに会えたら表彰してやろうなんて盛り上がったっけ？
ちょっと待て。じゃあ大臣の孫の誘拐は、鬼ヶ淵死守同盟は何も関係ないのかよ。
うん、全くない。
Okay, I'm just going over the events of Chapter 4 in the back of my mind. I'm pretty certain I remember at least a couple phone calls being made by the kidnappers at that point to some people the Sonozaki family was mentioned at those points. So I find it pretty hard to believe that the Sonozaki family had absolutely nothing to do with that kidnapping. A lot of the other incidents that Sonozaki family took credit, and by extension Ori took credit for, sure. I'm willing to entertain that idea at least, but the kidnapping? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I believe you. It was a simple and clear answer, which left no room for suspicion. And thinking about it, it's not surprising. Kidnapping the grandson of a minister and negotiating with him in person is a huge deal. The Onikufuji Guardians were a very aggressive group, but this operation wasn't so easy that it could be carried out by any of the normal residents in Hinamizawa. It was obviously the work of professional criminals, without a doubt. Like Yakuza?
ただね、さっきも少し言いかけたけど、園崎本家はね、この誘拐事件を自分たちが黒幕であるかのように振る舞っていた。
振る舞ったってのはどういうことだ？
これは園崎本家の秘密の家訓なの。ケイちゃんにはこっそり話すけど、話したことは内緒だよ。
Are you actually going to tell him about the Sonozaki family's tendency just to take credit for a lot of the mysterious stuff that happens in this village, namely relating to the yearly murder cases?
園崎本家ではね、自分たちに都合がいい何かの事件が起こった時、あたかもそれが自分たちの差し金であるように振る舞うブラフの伝統があるの。
ブラフって。
This is just like what you told Shion back in Chapter 5.
はったり？
うん。自分たちに利することがあったなら、それは事件でなくてもいい。お天気でもいいし、宝くじの当選番号でもいい。あたかも、園崎本家が望んだから、そのような結果になったかのように振る舞うの。そうするとどう？なんだかものすごい黒幕ってイメージになるでしょ？つまりはそういうこと。これは、園崎本家の当主だけに代々公伝で伝承される秘密のイメージ戦略なの。自分たちを本来よりも、より強大に見せようとするイメージ戦略。
This is exactly like what you told Shion.
じゃあほら、ダム戦争時に建設省を占拠するって作戦があったんだろ？あれは、しかもそのために武器やら訓練やら。
それも全く同じだよ、ケイちゃん。そんなバカな作戦本当にやるわけないじゃん。最大の目的は、あいつらならやりかねない、なんて恐ろしい奴らだっていうプレッシャーと幻想を与えるのが最大の目的だったんだよ。つまりこれもまたイメージ戦略ってわけ。
They obtained weapons and went through training just so they could exact pressure. They had no intention of actually carrying out the plan. The Sonozaki family was just bluffing. That made sense. Of course it did. It's impossible to attack the Ministry of Construction. Even if they did, it wouldn't solve the problem. All I had to do was use common sense. Even if they did, they would have been crushed within seconds by a huge number of policemen. Why didn't I think of that?
じゃあ、武器とか訓練とかってのは？
武器に関してはノーコメントでいいよね。
So there were weapons.
訓練もやったよ。はったりになるようちゃんとしっかりね。葛西さんをリーダーにお父さんとこの若い衆たちを引き連れてテキサスの砂漠でトレーナーさんと戦争ごっこをやった後はサンフランシスコでのんびり観光してた。
Did you bring back souvenirs?
じゃあ
I couldn't think of anything else. It was obvious now. No. Rain and I both. were completely fooled by the scrapbooks of Takano-san's delusion. Reina was so serious about it, so I believed her. But if you examined it closely, there were so many inconsistencies. I couldn't believe Reina took a delusion like that so seriously. I knew the reason why, though. She was still in this state of shock after being caught with the corpses that day. She was mentally unstable. Then she came across this tall tale, and she believed it. Reina is a smart girl. She wouldn't have taken it seriously if she was stable. Plus, another thing happened to wake me up from the delusion. The white van I saw yesterday came to school during the lunch break. The 4 men in work uniforms I saw were there too. I said thank you to Mion and followed them. The man who talked to me yesterday knocked on the door of the teacher's office.
毎度おこのぎ造園でございますね。
どうもご苦労様です。今日も暑いですね。
いえいえ、先生は今日もますますべっぴんで。
ではすみません。今日もよろしくお願いいたします。
はい、よろしくお願いします。これ、うちの事務屋から渡すように言われましたんで。
見積書と請求書ですね。
So, gardeners were following Reina? Why?
ありがとうございます。日付は空欄ですね。問題ありません。はい、お預かりします。
はい、それでは取り掛かりますんで。
The man was talking to Chi Sensei with a big smile.
ん？どうしたのかね、前原君。
Snooping!
あ、校長先生。今の男の人は誰ですか？
The principal pointed his finger at the window. When I looked out, I heard... Oh, wait. Oh, I thought they were in the room with them. The noise was coming from the engine of a motorized lawn mower. I saw young men in work uniforms taking another lawnmower, some brooms, and a ladder out of the van. I feel like my head is malfunctioning right now. I'm getting confused over things I really shouldn't.
園芸業者さんである。だいぶ垣根や樹木が手入れされてなかったからの。夏前に一度剪定を頼もうと思ったのだよ。
But what did they want with Reina?
ああ、校長先生。この度はお世話になりまして。
The man noticed the principal, took off his hat, and bowed.
うん。よろしく頼み申しますぞ。
なんとか今日中で終わらせますんで。しばらくうるさくしますんが、ご容赦を。
Each worker took one of the tools and walked towards the fence where the grass was growing. The engine of the lawnmower was very loud, and the kids who were playing in the schoolyard looked at it curiously.
ほら！危ないですから皆さん教室へ戻りなさい。
It was Chi Sensei. She handed an envelope with the documents in it to the principal. It said Okinoki Gardeners in green on the envelope.
では校長先生、申し訳ありませんが、この請求書を後日市役所に行かれるときに持って行ってください。
うん、心得た。
千恵先生、造園屋さんは昨日も来てました？
ええ、昨日の夕方に一度下見に来てもらいました。帰りに近道をしようとして迷ってしまったと言ってましたっけ？
Okay. If they got lost in the forest in the same spot that Keiichi and Reina were in, why didn't they bother asking Keiichi for directions?
この村は細い道はだいぶ入り組んでおるからの。無理もないわい。
I remember when I first came here. Ch.6 started talking about when she got lost, and they laughed together. There was never anything suspicious to begin with. I'm not 100% convinced on that in regards to our gardener friends here, but yeah, I mean, if we could get that my little question as to why exactly they wanted to speak to Reina in particular cleared up, then that'd be nice. I thought they were suspicious yesterday because of what Reina had told me. At first I thought it wasn't unusual to see a white van. But then, right after I heard her creepy story, I saw a white van parked on the road, and I got scared. The gardeners weren't familiar with the roads of Hinamizawa, and they got lost trying to take a shortcut on their way back. That's all. I had it totally twisted around? I believed that fake-sounding story. I believed that the Sonozaki family was working behind the scenes, and I fabricated the existence of a group of fanatical believers in my mind. Worse, I doubted Mion. Damn it! I'm such a fool! She's my friend. We took each other's hands that day, saying that we were a family made of friends, and that friends were friends no matter what. I said that, but then I doubted my friend. I'm so stupid! Anyway, Reina was the problem. She also needed to wake up from this crazy delusion. I had to hurry and wake her up. Reina seemed like she had no mind to listen to anyone else. She truly believes that the Sonozaki family are the masterminds of a large-scale conspiracy. Well, speaking of Reina, I remembered the plate number of the white van, and I also remembered their faces. Without a doubt, this was one of the vans that had been following me. So far, I've confirmed that 3 of the 4 cars have been following me. You know, I'm just now registering. Reina's text is no longer a shade of pink. It's closer to red now. I wonder if that's because she's going down the path of insanity. So far, I've confirmed that 3 or 4 cars have been following me. I could especially recall this white van because it followed me around the longest of all. The people who were in the other cars must be the lookouts, and the ones in this van must be tasked with direct contact, like kidnapping or assassination. The lookouts secured the surroundings, and the ones in this van attacked the target. That's a common maneuver involved in both kidnapping and assassination. The scrapbooks said that too. If so, I better watch out because it was them, not the lookouts, who came to the school premises. Stuff about assassinations and all that. Takano really did feed you those notebooks. Just to get you to start feeling paranoid about everyone around you, did she? She must know what this pathogen is. I don't think they'll attack me while I'm in school. They're in the early stage of their covert operation now, hiding their fangs and claws until the last stage of their horrifying scheme. That's why they won't take action in the school, where people are watching. But it looked like they were talking with Chi-sensei in a very friendly way. I could only hear bits and pieces of their conversation, but it sounded very suspicious. I tried to remember the chatter and the movements of their mouths, and I played my memory of it like a videotape in my mind.
毎度。
どうもご苦労様です。今日も暑いですね。
いいえいいえ。
ではすみません。今日もよろしくお願いいたします。
はい、よろしくお願いします。これ、うちの事務屋から渡すように言われましたんで。
と、ですね。ありがとうございます。
Why are these blank?
わあ、空欄ですね。問題ありません。はい、お預かりします。
はい、それでは。振りますんで。
I used the information I had to guess what was going on. I played the video again and again in my mind, and also paused it and played in slow motion again to check many times. Then, something unbelievably horrifying started to emerge. There's no doubt that they're acquainted with Ch.6. Ch.6, you might want to stay away from Reina for a while. But I've never seen him visit this school before, so it's hard to believe that Ch.6 is their contact. There's no doubt that they're the Death Squad under the direct control of the Sonozaki family. They have the local accent, which proves they're chosen from the Sonozaki Corps. The Death Squad was talking to Ch.6. They know each other. What's their relationship? Who's Ch.6 anyway? During the dam conflict, Hinamizawa's school was closed and was merged with the one in Okinomiya. But the Onikufuchi Guardians didn't accept that, and they made a part of the Forestry Service building into a school. But needless to say, the school they made didn't have a teacher. So, it was only going to be a token form of resistance. But a teacher who had a strong passion for education felt sorry for the children, and she came to work there. That was Rumiko Ch.6. It was obviously strange. Teachers are government employees, and they normally belong to their prefectures. As long as they lie low and don't cause trouble, they don't get fired, and they don't get demoted. They can work up until the official retirement age, and they're guaranteed to get a fixed retirement fund. She was one of those government employees, but she defied the Board of Education and came to work for Hinamizawa. The villagers admire her as a teacher of passion. I heard that Oryu Sonozaki herself successfully negotiated with the Board of Education that suspended Ch.6 for defying their orders. And where did you hear this? It was easy to get an answer from this by connecting the dots. So you're just assuming this. Ch.6 was recruited by Oryu Sonozaki as a teacher to work at the school the Onigufuchi Guardians had created. In other words, she was already working for Oryu before she came here. As for the principal, he was the principal of the school in Hinamizawa from the beginning. He's a respected person of this region, and he's been closely associated with the three families for a long time. So that means this school has been under the control of the Sonozaki family all along. That's why Ch.6 is acquainted with the Death Squad. It makes sense now. I really think you're just letting your imagination run away with you now. Ch.6 confirmed that I came to school today, made a phone call, and called them here? I don't know why she called them here. If she called them just to monitor me, they'd wait near the gate until class was over. But they came onto the school premises. Why, just watch them! Stop pretending to be a fool, Reina Ryugu. Do you think nothing will happen if you pretend not to notice it? Think hard, and calm down, Reina Ryugu. Good advice! Calm down! What will they try to do to me? What will they try to do to me today in school? In school? How are they going to do anything to my classmates and friends around me? It's easy. Ch.6 will tell me to come to the teacher's office during the last class of the day. What about my clubmates? That's easy too. Ch.6 can easily make them go home early using her authority as a teacher. She can make up any reason she wants. Maybe the classroom is going to have carpentry work done today, so they can't stay in school.
いいえいいえ。は今日。
ではすみません。今日もよろしくお願いいたします。
See? There's no doubt. I very much doubt that. They clearly said they're ready to do it today. And what else?
はい。よろしくお願いします。これ、うちの事務屋から渡すように言われましたんで。
と、ですね。ありがとうございます。わ、空欄ですね。問題ありません。はい、お預かりします。
I see. They gave Ch.6 an envelope with some documents in it. That blank is an eerie phrase. Was my name supposed to be in the blank? Why is it left blank? What does that mean? I told you, Reina Ryugu. Do you still think that nothing will happen if you pretend not to notice it? Stop that! So, what it must mean is that it's an order from higher up. It says to make Reina Ryugu become blank. I took a peek from the shadows, and I saw the principal taking documents out from the envelope. He started reading. Oh my god, I just realized she's gonna see Keiichi here, and then she's gonna think that he's part of this too. And that is probably gonna lead to conflict. Oh fuck. He looked stern. He looked very serious. I wish I could take a peek at the documents, but I was too far away. I kept looking at him just to see if he'd react at all. And then, the envelope caught my eye. The envelope said, Okonogi Gardeners, and had some numbers that looked like a phone number. See? It's just gardening stuff. Fortunately, I have good eyesight. I memorized the number. If they're a deaf squad, the gardening company must be a camouflage occupation. God damn it. It probably doesn't even exist. Verify it! I wanted to find out. I looked for a phone. There's only one phone, and it's in the teacher's office. Go look for another phone! Fortunately, the teachers were chatting in the hallway, looking at the gardeners. It was now or never. I made sure nobody was watching me go into the teacher's office. I rushed in and grabbed the phone on the principal's desk. I went over the phone number in my head and dialed it up. I'm glad they have a touch-tone phone. It would have been difficult if it was a rotary dial. If somebody answered, I'd only have to ask, is this the Okonogi Gardeners? I wait for the answer before hanging up. It should be easy. It connected.
お客様がおかけになった電話番号は
I felt a cold chill run through my body from the bottom of my feet. Wait, don't make quick judgment. I might remember the number wrong. No, I know I remembered it right. It was an easy number to remember. It's impossible to remember it wrong. Then, did I dial it wrong? I put the phone down and started over. This time I dialed the number more slowly. The teachers might be coming back at any time. In that situation, it was risky to do anything slowly. But I need to make absolutely sure.
お客様がおかけになった電話番号は
It's the same. There's no doubt. The company, Okonogi Gardeners, doesn't exist. Maybe they just are having phone troubles. It's just a camouflage occupation for the Sonozaki family's death squad.
番号をお確かめの上、もう一度ダイヤルしてください。お客様がおかけになった電話番号は
I was too stunned to put down the receiver. The announcement kept running over and over again. voice was cold and creepy. I hung up the phone and rushed out of the teacher's office. I ran to the bottom bathroom and held my head in an attempt to cool down. Calm down, Reina. Calm down, Reina Ryugu. Stay cool. Reina Ryugu. I wasn't safe here anymore. If I stayed here, I might be erased, even in the open. They'd erase me? Why? They aren't certain I have the scrapbooks. I told Keiichi-kun where I hid the scrapbooks. Yesterday I told him I hid them in my hideout in the garbage dump. Is Keiichi-kun in cahoots with the Sonozaki family? No, he's not! I felt as if my head was a pot that was cooking some dubious stew. There was only soup in my brain. I cut up clues, information, and facts just like I'd cut vegetables and threw them into the pot. Some of them were floating on the surface, and others were on the bottom of the pot. They were being cooked in a boiling soup. No, it can't be. Keiichi-kun is on my side. He's the only one who's on my side. He held out his hand to me at the trash piles. There was no lie in that hand. When he grabbed my wrist, I felt nothing but his strong and pure heart. He promised me he'd be on my side. I shouldn't doubt Keiichi-kun. He's the only one I should trust. He's the only one who's on my side right now.
ごめん、ケイチ君。危うく君を疑いそうになった。本当にごめんね。本当にごめんね。
I said it out loud on purpose, full of regret that I doubted Keiichi-kun, the only one who was on my side. Now that I think about it, whether I have the scrapbooks or not might not matter to them. Erase anyone who is suspicious. That's the safest way. Does that mean they're in a hurry? The day of Shiro-sama's revival might be just around the corner. And that's why they're trying to get rid of any small fish bones that are stuck in the throat, by any means, before it's too late. We don't need her anymore. Just erase her if you're worried so much. I could easily picture Oryu Sonozaki saying that. Picture? No, she did say that! That's why they're here today. You don't know that! What should I do? What should I do? Should I wait until school is over? I was like a fish in a pond. No matter how many times I escaped from the net, I was in the pond, and they owned the pond. I didn't stand a chance. And what should I do now? I couldn't keep escaping from the net. I should get out of the pond. I didn't know how to fight them. I didn't know who was on my side. I was about to give in to despair. For now, I have to think about how to survive this, so I'd at least have time to think about how to fight against them. I have to get out of this pond. Well, when I was about to leave the bathroom, one of my classmates came in. I pretended to be sick and talked to the girl while leaning on the wall.
ごめんね。私、ちょっとどうしても具合が悪くて。早退するからって先生に伝えておいてくれないかな。
I shouldn't let Ch.6 know that I'm leaving school early if I'm trying to run away from them. But if they didn't, they might think I ran away without cause. That might lead them to chase after me without mercy. If that happens, I don't stand a chance. They're planning to capture me after school is over, but I happened to feel sick and left school early. If they took it that way, they wouldn't think that I noticed the noose tightening around me. I was about to go back to the classrooms to get my bag, but I changed my mind and turned around. I didn't need my bag anymore. I realized nobody was watching me, so I stopped pretending to be sick and started running.
ん？千恵先生、ここがおかしいですぞ。
おかしい？どうかなさいましたか？
見積書と請求書の日付が空欄になっておりますぞ。ここは今日の日付ではないのですかな？
ああ、そこはお役所の都合らしいんです。見積書の日付と請求書の日付が同じだと、なんだか都合が悪いそうで、庶務係さんから空欄にするようよく念を押されています。
あとそれから請求書に書いてある電話番号と封筒に書いてある電話番号が違っていますぞ。どちらが正しいのですかな？
あらやだ、本当ですね。社長さん。
はい。どうしましたんね？
請求書に書いてある電話番号と封筒の電話番号が違ってますけど。
請求書の方の電話番号が正しいんで大丈夫ですね。
Oh, my sweet Jesus. That's why the phone number didn't work.
先代の事務所の時の封筒がまだだいぶ余ってたもんなんで、それに入れてきてまったんですわ。すんませんね。
You stupid son of a bitch. You just acted as an unwitting instigator of doom just now with that envelope.
バイトの子に全部新しい番号のハンコを押しとくように言ったんだけどな。すんまへん。
And so is your part-timer. Oh my god. New tips unlocked. Lunch takeout list 3. Oh boy. More lunch takeouts. Oh dear god, this is not good. She's going off the freaking deep end and fast. The danger of a culture-bound syndrome lies in the fact that it can easily trigger delusional misidentification syndrome. That is to say, in the current case, every time the patient sees something trivial, she tries to interpret it as a curse. And it's believed that as a result of the accumulation of these events in an understandable form, a delusional system is created, ultimately leading to paranoia. Furthermore, the patient is also exhibiting slight signs of a personality disorder. Of course, it's at a very mild level, and it's not causing any hindrance whatsoever in the patient's daily life. It's common for even healthy individuals to have primary delusions in their daily lives. But they usually ignore it automatically without recognition, since those delusions are nonsensical. However, there are cases where these delusions accumulate despite being incomprehensible. It largely depends on the particular characteristics of the individual, and it's believed that the patient shows relatively strong characteristics in this area. I believe you're very much aware that primary delusions are categorized into 3 different kinds. Delusional mood is the feeling of impending crisis without basis. Delusional intuition is the feeling of a sense of duty or goal without basis. Delusional perception is the feeling of a baseless cause against a baseless target. In the patient's case, it's believed that these incomprehensible delusions accumulated, acted out simultaneously with the culture-bound syndrome, which triggered a delusional misidentification syndrome, and it ultimately caused the incomprehensible delusions to become understandable by interpreting them as a curse. The incomprehensible delusion system induces understandable secondary delusions, further strengthening the patient's delusional system with the passage of time. The delusional parasitosis mentioned earlier can be considered a secondary delusion. A common factor of all cases of paranoia is that even after an outbreak, they still appear perfectly normal with no change in their personalities. The patients are unaware of their own ailments, and due to their personal interpretations of their delusional system, there are many cases where patients arm themselves logically, making it extremely difficult for a third party to point out that they're having a delusion. Furthermore, although it may depend on the tendency of the delusions, there are also cases where a persecutory delusion turns into a pursuit delusion, or a conspiracy delusion, resulting in the patient creating an imaginary enemy and taking up antisocial behavior. This would explain a lot of the behaviors in everyone in all the previous chapters who developed a sense of paranoia and everything. But all of them? Every single one of them developing these same exact ailments? With such similar symptoms across all of them? I don't know. That seems too convenient. For example, there are cases where believers of a religious cult were deeply influenced by the cult founder's paranoid delusions, which shifted the group into a conspiracy delusion, and that made them conduct antisocial behavior in the name of self-defense. Although no such cases have been reported in Japan yet, it could very well happen in the near future. Fortunately, the patient hasn't reached that serious condition as of now. With proper treatment, she should be able to make a full recovery. Please make sure that her father also understands that this is not an unusual case, but something caused by the accumulation of a number of innocent factors that anyone could have. The patient can be treated only by deepening her bond with her father. As long as she has that bond, she can certainly be treated. For the reasons above, if the patient is to return to her home village, I strongly recommend that the patient continue to receive guidance from specialized medical institutions. Please excuse me for writing such a long letter. Thank you for reading this until the very end. Again, the symptoms all sound very similar to what all the other characters who experienced these paranoid delusions experienced. But could they really all have the same basic neurological disorders manifest in all of them? And under such convenient circumstances too, at such convenient times, namely usually around the Watanagashi festival. And then there's everything else relating to my big old conspiracy theory, and Rika's death and everything, the Great Hinamizawa disaster. It's too convenient, what I just read. I think my theory is still correct. And that right now, Reina and Keiichi, and I guess Mion as well, by considering what Keiichi told her, are all acting on incomplete information based on my theory. I'm going to need something that will definitively disprove this big theory of mine before I'm willing to discard it altogether. Until then, I see no reason to get rid of it, even temporarily. There was a lot to digest in this chapter, that's for sure. Definitely gives me a lot to think about. But like I said, I still think I'm ultimately on the right track here. Even if the other characters here aren't, at least not entirely. That being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and end things here. I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Higurashi When They Cry Kai, Chapter 6. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I will see you all next time. Take care.